When was the last time you walked into a supermarket? You push a cart through the aisles, glance across hundreds of neatly packaged products, and casually pick up a tray of meat that has already been cut, labeled, and preserved for you. No preparation, no risk. The entire process takes maybe 15 minutes, not counting the checkout line. But for most of human history, getting that exact amount of meat meant facing animals that outweighed humans by thousands of kilograms and possessed tusks, horns, claws, or raw strength far beyond anything a human body could physically match. So, what allowed a species with no predatory fangs, no claws, and physical abilities inferior to most large animals to become the most effective hunter Earth has ever seen? The answer was never a single weapon. It was the result of an entire collection of strategies involving physics, terrain, chemistry, and coordinated cooperation, accumulated through hundreds of thousands of years of survival. And one of the strangest strategies appeared surprisingly early: creating a weapon capable of functioning without a human needing to directly wield it at the moment of the kill. For decades, archaeologists believed that ancient humans hunted mammoths primarily by throwing spears directly at them. That image appeared in textbooks, museums, and documentaries for generations. Then researchers from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History uncovered a hunting system at Toltepec dating back roughly 15,000 years. They discovered two artificial pit traps approximately 1.7 meters deep containing the remains of at least 14 mammoths. But the most important detail was not the bones themselves. At the bottom of the pits were traces of large wooden stakes sharpened to points and reinforced with stone. That meant the hunters did not need to physically overpower the animal. They turned its own body weight into the killing force. When the mammoth fell into the pit, its multi-ton body drove itself onto the sharpened stakes below. The entire trap functioned like a massive mechanical system that used gravity instead of muscle. But hunting did not always require structures that large. Sometimes, all it required was understanding how an object moves through the air. At Gesher Beno Yaakov in the Jordan Valley of Israel, archaeologists found nearly perfect spherical stones dating back around 780,000 years. These were not naturally rounded rocks shaped by erosion. Homo erectus intentionally crafted them into forms optimized for long-distance throwing and stable flight. Evidence of how effective this strategy was appears in the impact marks found on ancient animal bones at Boxgrove in England, deep circular dents consistent with high-speed projectile strikes. When hunting larger animals, the same principle was scaled up by using the landscape itself, driving prey into narrow terrain or toward the base of cliffs before dropping large rocks from above. Terrain was no longer simply a safe place to stand. It became part of the hunting system itself. Over time, humans began to understand that the most efficient way to control animals was not necessarily through direct confrontation, but by controlling where they moved. One remarkable example was discovered beneath Lake Huron in North America. Around 9,000 years ago, the area now underwater was dry land. Archaeologists found long stone walls arranged in a V-shaped formation that gradually narrowed into a dead-end corridor. The structure functioned as a giant guidance system for migrating caribou herds. Hunters did not need to surround the entire herd. They only needed to make every other path more difficult than the one they wanted the animals to take. Following instinct, the herd gradually guided itself into a place where escape became impossible. What makes this even more remarkable is that similar structures appeared independently in places such as Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Armenia, and Kazakhstan. Communities with no contact with one another arrived at nearly identical solutions to the same survival problem. But the strategy that surprised modern scientists the most involved something almost invisible: chemical toxins. At Border Cave in South Africa, researchers discovered small wooden sticks dating back roughly 40,000 years with deliberately carved grooves cut into them. Chemical analysis revealed traces of ricinoleic acid, a compound associated with castor plants, one of the most potent natural sources of plant-based toxins. These tiny projectiles were not designed to kill through physical impact. They operated through an entirely different mechanism, delivering poison into the prey's body and allowing biology itself to destroy the animal from within. That required an extremely sophisticated level of thinking. Hunters had to understand that the consequences of an action might not appear until hours later. They struck the animal, watched it run away, appearing almost completely normal, and then patiently tracked it until the poison finally took effect. This was no longer simple predatory instinct. It required causal reasoning, memory, experimentation, and the transmission of knowledge across generations. But perhaps the most terrifying hunting strategy humans ever developed required almost no tools at all. They simply never stopped moving. Biologically, humans do not resemble a typical predator. We lack thick protective skin, massive claws, and the explosive sprinting speed needed to outrun most prey animals. What makes us different is endurance. The human body contains roughly 5 million sweat glands, allowing continuous cooling during long-distance movement. The Achilles tendon functions like an energy-storing spring. The large gluteal muscles stabilize the body during sustained running. More importantly, humans can breathe independently of their stride rhythm, something most four-legged animals cannot efficiently do at high speeds for extended periods. Direct evidence for this type of hunting was discovered at White Sands in New Mexico. Fossilized footprints, dating between 21,000 and 23,000 years ago, preserve a pursuit between a human and a giant ground sloth. The human footprints move steadily and continuously behind the animal. Several sections show the sloth turning to defend itself, while the hunter briefly shifts direction before continuing the pursuit. There was no need to finish the hunt immediately. The hunter only needed to keep moving until the prey collapsed from exhaustion first. From the prey's perspective, this kind of pressure was almost unknown in nature. A creature that was not stronger, not faster, but seemingly incapable of tiring. Once these strategies were combined together, humans began creating something almost no other predator had ever possessed: large-scale coordination based on language and long-term planning. At Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic, archaeologists uncovered a hunting settlement roughly 27,000 years old, built using the bones of more than 100 mammoths. These bones were not scattered randomly. They had been deliberately arranged into structures surrounding the living area. That suggests the existence of labor division, organized communities, and the ability to maintain long-term plans. Structures of this scale could not have been created by isolated hunting parties operating independently. Then, around 14,000 to 15,000 years ago, humans made another decision unlike anything else in evolutionary history. Instead of killing another predator species, they chose to cooperate with it. At Bonn Oberkassel in Germany, scientists discovered the skeleton of a dog buried alongside humans. Analysis showed the animal had once suffered from a severe illness as a puppy but survived because it received long-term care from humans. It was not merely a hunting tool, it was part of the community. And that may have been the greatest turning point in the entire history of human hunting. For the first time, human intelligence was no longer being used only to kill more efficiently, but also to build alliances with another species. Now return to the modern supermarket. The tray of meat sitting inside that plastic package is the endpoint of hundreds of thousands of years of continuous innovation. Pit traps used gravity instead of strength. Stone walls manipulated behavior instead of relying on direct confrontation. Poisoned projectiles exploited chemistry instead of mechanical force. Persistence hunting relied on physiology instead of speed. And coordinated groups transformed separate individuals into unified hunting systems. All of it was developed without universities, laboratories, or written records. Only memory, observation, and the ability to pass experience from one generation to the next. The most astonishing thing about these strategies is not how brutal they were. It is how intellectually sophisticated they were. And every human being alive today is the direct descendant of individuals intelligent enough to invent them.